Unidentified vessels on approach vector, Captain. 4 signatures, 1 fleeing, 3 in pursuit. Captain Elena Rodriguez leaned forward in her command chair aboard the Prometheus, Earth's most advanced deep space exploration vessel. They were 3 months into their mission to chart the outer reaches of the Kuiper Belt when the sensors picked up the anomalies. Configuration, she demanded. Lieutenant Park, her sensor officer, shook his head in bewilderment. Unknown. Definitely not ours. The lead vessel's whole composition appears to be crystalline. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a breathtaking sight, a ship that resembled a massive, multifaceted diamond, trailing prismatic light as it corkscrewed through space. Behind it, 3 predatory craft of brutal, angular design closed the distance, firing pulses of sickly green energy. "Those are kill shots," muttered Commander Alvarez, her XO. "Whoever's flying that crystal ship is in serious trouble." Elena's mind raced through regulations. First contact protocols dictated observation only. Intervention could trigger an interstellar incident, but the crystalline vessel was clearly desperate, and something about the pursuers' methodical aggression disturbed her. "Bring us between the crystal ship and its pursuers," she ordered. "Shields to maximum. Open all communication channels." The bridge crew exchanged glances, but moved to comply. The Prometheus surged forward, its fusion engines flaring as it took up position as a barrier. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Earth vessel Prometheus. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The pursuing vessels slowed but maintained formation. After 30 seconds of silence, a reply came, not from the attackers, but from the crystalline ship. The message arrived as a series of mathematical equations and spectral patterns that the computer struggled to interpret. "It's learning our language in real time," Park said in amazement. "Analyzing our transmissions and—" A voice emerged from the speakers, melodic and multitoned, as if several voices spoke in perfect harmony. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Valora, former High Adjudicator of the Galactic Hegemony Court. I request emergency sanctuary under Article 7 of your United Nations Refugee Statutes." Elena's eyebrows shot up. This alien not only knew of Earth but understood their legal frameworks. Before she could respond, a harsh, guttural transmission cut through. "Attention Earth vessel. This is Enforcement Squad Delta of the Galactic Hegemony. You are harboring a fugitive criminal. Withdraw immediately or be classified as hostile." The crystal ship pulsed with blue light. "Captain Rodriguez, they are charging weapons for a simultaneous strike. Your vessel cannot withstand it." Elena made her decision. "Tactical, target the lead pursuer's propulsion systems. Communications, inform Earth Command of first contact. Dr. Chen, prepare the diplomatic suite." She stood, straightening her uniform. "Let's see if we can resolve this without starting an interspecies incident." The Prometheus fired a warning shot across the lead pursuer's bow. The 3 ships immediately broke formation, circling like wolves. "They're deploying something," Park announced as dozens of small objects launched from the pursuers. "Hunter-killer drones," Valora's harmonic voice explained, "designed to breach hulls and eliminate targets." The objects accelerated toward the Prometheus. "All hands, prepare for boarding action." Elena shouted, drawing her sidearm as the first impact shuddered through the hull. The ship's AI reported multiple breaches on decks 3 through 7. Security feeds showed mechanical spider-like constructs crawling through corridors, scanning for life signs. Elena headed for the turbolift. "Commander Alvarez, you have the bridge. I'm heading to intercept." "Captain, that's not protocol," Alvarez began. "Neither is first contact with a galactic fugitive," Elena replied as the lift doors closed. When she reached Deck 5, chaos greeted her. The drones, silver carapace with multiple limbs ending in cutting tools, were methodically slicing through security barriers. Ship security personnel fired pulse rifles, dropping several machines, but more kept coming. A blinding flash of light materialized beside Alina, coalescing into a humanoid figure composed entirely of faceted crystal. Valora stood nearly 7 feet tall, her translucent body shifting through colors, currently pulsing with aggressive red. "Your weapons are inefficient against hegemony technology," she stated, raising a crystalline hand. A pulse of energy erupted from her palm, shorting out 3 drones instantly. "Target their central processors. Here." She pointed to a spot on the drone's underbellies. Alina adjusted her weapon's settings and fired. The drone collapsed, its legs curling inward. "Not bad for a species with no prior contact experience," Valora observed, her color shifting to an approving blue-violet. Together, they fought through the corridors toward the main breach point, an impromptu alliance against the mechanical invaders. The United Nations Security Council chamber bristled with tension. 3 weeks after the Prometheus returned to Earth with its crystalline passenger, world leaders gathered to confront an unthinkable reality. Humanity was not alone, and its first introduction to galactic society would be as prey. "This is absurd." General Williams of the North American Alliance slammed his fist on the polished table. "You expect us to believe an empire of energy vampires has been harvesting civilizations for millennia." Valora stood at the center of the chamber, her crystalline form now a calm azure. Captain Rodriguez stood beside her, still wearing her dress uniform despite the dark circles under her eyes. "The evidence has been provided," Valora replied, her harmonic voice echoing. "I have shared surveillance footage from 17 harvesting ceremonies, which could be fabricated," the Chinese premier countered. "We have only your word." Dr. Quaim Osei shifted uncomfortably in his observer's seat. The neurologist had been studying Valora since her arrival, fascinated by her crystalline biology. He raised his hand tentatively. "Excuse me," he interrupted, "but I believe I can provide confirmation." All eyes turned to the slender Ghanaian scientist as he approached the central podium. He connected his tablet to the display system, and brain scan images appeared on the chamber screens. "These are comparative neural patterns," he explained. The left shows Valora attempting to use her species' natural empathic abilities on a volunteer. The right shows the human response. The scans displayed a chaotic interference pattern. When Valora attempted to emit calming empathic waves, a standard diplomatic practice in the hegemony, the human mind not only resisted but generated a feedback pattern that caused her physical distress. He glanced at Valora. "No offense intended." "None taken, Doctor," she replied. "Your species' neural resistance is unprecedented." General Williams leaned forward. "Are you suggesting we have some natural defense against these archons?" "Potentially," Osei nodded. Further testing revealed that human brains produce specific frequencies when experiencing moral outrage or righteous indignation, emotions that appear to disrupt hegemony control mechanisms. The room erupted in overlapping conversations until security alarms blared. The Secretary General's aide rushed in, face pale. "Multiple unidentified objects have entered the solar system," she announced. "They've bypassed our outer detection grid." Silence fell like a hammer. "The advanced scouts," Valora confirmed. "The main harvesting fleet will follow within days, not weeks as I estimated." As panic threatened to engulf the chamber, the doors swung open. A compact Asian man in civilian clothes strode in purposefully, ignoring the security personnel pursuing him. "Colonel Jiang Wei," the Chinese premier said sharply. "You are not authorized to be here." "Former Colonel," Jiang corrected. "And I believe my expertise in asymmetric warfare might be relevant when facing an enemy that outmatches us in every conventional metric." Captain Rodriguez recognized the name. Jiang Wei had been China's most brilliant military strategist before his disgrace for refusing orders during a border conflict, choosing to spare civilian lives instead of securing a tactical advantage. He approached Valora without hesitation. "Your hegemony, they expect surrender, correct? All species eventually submit to harvesting. In 10,000 years, none have mounted effective resistance," Valora confirmed. Zhang smiled thinly. Then we have our first advantage. They expect predictable behavior. He turned to the assembled leaders. I studied the footage Valora provided. The hegemony's combat doctrine relies on overwhelming force and psychological dominance, but their actual tactical flexibility is limited by arrogance. They've never needed to adapt. Dr. Osei stepped forward. My team has been developing transmitters that could amplify the neural resistance patterns I discovered, and I have access to hegemony communication protocols. Valora added. Zhang nodded. Then I propose Operation Defiance Protocol. We prepare for apparent surrender while establishing a global resistance network equipped with these neural transmitters. General Williams scoffed. A guerrilla campaign against interstellar invaders. That's your plan? No, Zhang replied calmly. My plan is to use humanity's greatest weapon, our unpredictability. For the first time, the hegemony will face an enemy that refuses to follow the script. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's displays lit up with emergency broadcasts. Hegemony scout ships had been detected entering Earth's atmosphere. Time had run out. Admiral Zorak stood motionless before the viewport of his command vessel, six-fingered hands clasped behind his back. Earth's blue-white sphere filled the view, serene and seemingly untouched. Around it, the hegemony's harvesting fleet had unfurled into position. 60 massive fractal structures that resembled geometric snowflakes, each segment housing battalions of troops drawn from 100 conquered worlds. Primitive, he murmured, tracing one of the ceremonial scars on his scaled forearm, a mark commemorating his first successful harvest 3 centuries ago. Yet they'd managed to shelter Valora. His second-in-command, a multi-limbed insectoid named Kezra, approached with a nervous chittering. Admiral, the humans have responded to our communication. They've invited you to a diplomatic reception. Zorax's vertical pupils narrowed. A reception. Not unconditional surrender. They claim it's their cultural protocol before accepting new authority. Kezra's antennae twitched. The Archons advise accepting their invitation to expedite the harvest. 2 hours later, Zorax's shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, escorted by fighter craft with clearly visible weapon systems, a primitive attempt at displaying strength that would have amused him if it weren't so futile. The shuttle landed in a human city called New York, where a small delegation awaited. At its head stood a female human in formal attire, the same one who had sheltered Valora. Captain Rodriguez, Zorax acknowledged, or should I say, Ambassador now. Alina Rodriguez maintained a neutral expression. Admiral Zorax, welcome to Earth. I'm authorized to negotiate terms for humanity's integration into the hegemony. There are no negotiations in a harvest, Zorax replied coldly. But I will observe your cultural rituals before the Archon's arrival. Elena led the delegation through the city to a massive stone building. This is the Metropolitan Museum of Art, she explained. We thought you might appreciate understanding human culture before the transition occurs. Inside, Zorax found himself surrounded by thousands of human creative works spanning millennia. The planned reception was already underway, with humans in formal attire mingling nervously among his security detail. He paused before a large canvas depicting humans rising against a tyrant. Interesting choice, Elena remarked. That's liberty leading the people. We had a long history of resistance against oppression. All species resist initially, Zorax dismissed, though something about the painting's raw emotion disturbed him. Then they accept their place. As they moved through galleries, Zorax became increasingly disoriented. Unlike the ordered artistic expressions of hegemony worlds, human creativity was chaotic, emotional, unpredictable. Sculptures of human forms in agony and ecstasy, paintings of rebellion and sacrifice, music that shifted from harmonic to dissonant without pattern. Your species lacks cohesion, he observed, attempting to regain his equilibrium. We call it individuality, Elena replied. It's our greatest strength. Zorax's communication device chimed. The subjugation ceremony has begun. he announced, unable to hide his relief at returning to procedure. On screens throughout the museum, footage appeared from major cities worldwide. The Archon's psychic tendrils, visualized as golden light, reached toward gathered humans. Standard procedure: the tendrils would connect to civilian minds, establishing control while harvesting emotional energy. Millions would surrender their will simultaneously, becoming docile before physical occupation began. But something was wrong. In Times Square, just blocks away, a teenage girl continued creating a sidewalk mural, even as golden light enveloped her. Her art depicted a crystalline figure, unmistakably Valora, holding scales of justice. "What is happening?" Zorax demanded, watching as humans worldwide shuddered under psychic assault, but remained conscious, aware, resistant. Alina's diplomatic mask slipped, revealing a fierce smile. "We're happening, Admiral." All around him, the reception attendees ceased their nervous pretense. Even surrounded by his guards, Zorax sensed the shift in power. "You knew the psychic subjugation would fail," he realized. "How?" "Let's just say humanity doesn't surrender easily," Alina replied. "And we've had an excellent teacher." "They're calling us what?" Alina asked, hunched over the makeshift resistance command center hidden beneath London's underground. Jiang Wei smiled grimly as he adjusted the captured hegemony communication device. "Beautiful monsters. That's the term their ground troops are using for humans now." 3 weeks into the occupation, humanity had proven anything but docile. After the failed psychic subjugation, the hegemony had deployed conventional forces to secure major population centers. Their battle doctrine, perfected over millennia of unopposed conquests, anticipated minimal resistance once their technological superiority was demonstrated. Instead, they encountered a species that transformed everyday life into weapons of war. "The Tokyo subway incident?" Alina asked, reviewing the latest intelligence. 17 hegemony troop carriers disabled, Zhang confirmed. The transit workers flooded the tunnels, then electrified the water. Dr. Osai entered the command center, his lab coat stained and torn. "The frequency transmitters are evolving," he announced, placing a small device on the table. "We've discovered something remarkable about human emotional projection." Before he could elaborate, the underground bunker shook with a distant explosion. "They're sweeping this sector," a resistance fighter reported. "Ita 10 minutes. Show me the Tokyo transmitter data," Alina insisted, ignoring the danger. Osai activated a holographic display. "Initially, we designed the transmitters to amplify individual justice frequencies, but when humans gather, particularly when sharing intense emotional experiences, the effect multiplies exponentially." The display showed footage from a cathedral in occupied Paris. A choir had gathered secretly, singing an ancient requiem while a resistance member activated a transmitter. As their voices harmonized in grief and defiance, hegemony soldiers collapsed, their neural implants overloaded. "It's not just the technology," Osei explained excitedly. "It's the human emotional projection itself, especially when collectively focused. We're calling it emotional resonance." Another explosion, closer this time. "Evacuate to position Bravo," Alina ordered. "Bring everything." As the command center emptied, a communication alert sounded. Alina hesitated, then accepted the transmission. Admiral Zorax's reptilian face appeared, his scales dulled by exhaustion. "Captain Rodriguez," he acknowledged. "Or should I call you Resistance Commander now?" "Admiral," she replied cautiously. Unusual to call directly. "Your species continues to confound hegemony protocols." Something unreadable flickered in his eyes. "I've interrogated 17 of your fighters this week. None provided useful intelligence. Instead, they asked about my homeworld." Alina remained silent, remembering their conversation at the museum. 3,000 years ago, my species created art much like yours," Zorax continued, his voice lowering. "Before the hegemony arrived, he tilted the visual feed, revealing a small object in his quarters, a painting showing scaled beings dancing beneath 3 moons. I've been authorized to increase civilian casualties until resistance ends, he stated flatly. Standard hegemony protocol. Then why call me? Elena challenged. The bunker shook again. Time was running out. Zorax leaned closer to the transmission. Because your fighters laugh when facing execution. They refuse neural extraction, even under extreme duress. Some quote poetry while dying. His vertical pupils dilated slightly. I need to understand. Before Elena could respond, Jiang Wei appeared beside her. Understanding isn't necessary for cooperation, Admiral. Zorax's posture stiffened. Meaning? You've begun collecting human art, Jiang observed, not just for intelligence gathering. The hegemony wouldn't approve of such cultural contamination. For a moment, genuine alarm crossed the Admiral's face. Perhaps we could continue this conversation securely, Jiang suggested. There's much your hegemony doesn't know about their own history. Information Valora preserved. Elena watched in amazement as uncertainty, perhaps for the first time in centuries, appeared in the Admiral's expression. The Opera House in Vienna, Zorax finally said. Oh, 200 hours. Come alone. The transmission cut as the bunker's emergency lights flashed red. You think he's defecting? Elena asked as they rushed toward the escape tunnel. No, Jiang replied, but he's questioning. For a species under 3 millennia of psychic control, that's revolutionary. Behind them, hegemony forces breached the command center, finding only empty workstations and a single transmitter broadcasting the defiant chorus from Paris. The Vienna Opera House stood eerily intact amid the half-destroyed city. 6 months into the occupation, most cultural landmarks have been either repurposed as hegemony command centers or demolished as examples. This preservation was no accident. Admiral Zorax had personally designated it as a research facility for human acoustic phenomena. Elena slipped through the darkened streets, her face hidden beneath a hooded cloak. Twice she froze as patrol drones hummed overhead, their scanning beams sweeping the rubble. The resistance had developed techniques to evade detection, but tonight she carried something that set her pulse racing, a data crystal containing evidence Valora had safeguarded for centuries. The stage door was unlocked as promised. Inside, the Grand Theater retained its faded elegance, though dust covered the velvet seats. Moonlight filtered through the damaged dome, casting ghostly patterns across the empty stage. You came alone. Zorax emerged from the shadows, his reptilian form moving with predatory grace. He wore no insignia, no ceremonial armor, only a simple gray tunic. As did you, Elena noted, reaching for her concealed weapon. Unnecessary, he gestured to the abandoned orchestra pit. If I wanted you captured, this building would be surrounded by now. Why am I here, Admiral? Zorax studied her with ancient eyes. In 3 millennia of service, I have overseen 27 harvests. Earth is the first to resist beyond initial subjugation. He tilted his head. The Archons are disturbed. Good. No, his voice dropped. Not good. When the Archons are disturbed, they come personally. The implications settled like ice in Elena's stomach. When? Now. Zorax activated the small projector. Above the stage, holographic images formed. A massive structure approaching Earth's orbit. The eternal radiance arrives tomorrow. The first Archon to personally oversee a harvesting in 7 centuries. The structure resembled a golden vortex condensed into physical form, pulsing with stolen life energy. Why warn me? Elena demanded. Because an Archon's arrival changes protocols, Zorax replied. Standard resistance suppression will be replaced with total psychic extraction. Elena recalled Valora's briefings. Entire populations drained simultaneously. Yes. For the first time, something like regret crossed Zorax's features. Your species has shown remarkable resistance to standard extraction. The Archon will not be so limited. Elena withdrew the data crystal. Then perhaps it's time the Archon faced something unexpected as well. Before Zorax could respond, emergency sirens wailed across the city. The Opera House's ancient speakers crackled to life with an announcement in the hegemony's universal language. Attention all beings. The glorious eternal radiance approaches. Mandatory viewing of the subjugation address. Resistance will result in immediate termination. It's happening ahead of schedule. Zorax hissed, genuine alarm breaking through his composure. Throughout occupied territories worldwide, massive projection screens activated in public squares. Countless millions, both human and hegemony forces, were compelled to watch as golden light coalesced above the occupied United Nations headquarters in New York. The Archon, known as Eternal Radiance, manifested as a swirling vortex of radiant energy, its voice penetrating directly into the consciousness of all observers. Inhabitants of Earth, your resistance dishonors the hegemony. Your emotional energy will serve a greater purpose. Submit to. The transmission suddenly split, half the screen showing the Archon, while the other half displayed Valora, her crystalline form glowing with intensity. People of Earth, and all subjugated worlds. Her harmonic voice rang clear. What you witness is not divinity but parasitism. The feed switched to footage compiled over centuries. The Archons draining entire civilizations, transforming vibrant beings into hollow shells. World after world, species after species, all harvested to feed immortal tyrants. This is illegal. Elena's voice joined the broadcast from a hidden location. By the hegemony's own founding compact, Article 7, no sentient species shall be reduced below consciousness. The Archon's golden form pulsed with rage. Tendrils of energy lashed outward, shattering the UN building's remaining structure. Enough. Its voice thundered across the global broadcast. The human female will be located, and the psychic assault struck without warning. A concentrated beam of golden energy targeting Elena's mental signature. But instead of collapsing, she channeled every ounce of righteous fury she possessed directly back through the connection. The feedback created a visible loop of energy between human and Archon. For one breathtaking moment, the immortal being flickered, its perfect form distorting as it encountered an emotional state it had never processed in 10 millennia of existence. Human defiance backed by moral conviction. In desperation, the Archon obliterated the entire UN complex, killing thousands, but not before the broadcast reached resistance cells worldwide. In Vienna, Elena stumbled as the psychic attack ended. Zorax caught her before she fell. "Impossible," he whispered. "You damaged an Archon." "Not me," Elena gasped, recovering. "All of us. Our justice frequency." For the first time in 3,000 years, Admiral Zorax made a decision that wasn't directed by the hegemony. "Come," he said. "I know where Valora is hiding, and I have something she needs to see." The abandoned salt mine beneath the Austrian Alps had served as a weapons depot during Earth's previous conflicts. Now, it housed something unprecedented. Representatives from 17 formerly subjugated species gathered in secret conclave. Elena entered the vast chamber alongside Zorax, whose presence caused an immediate ripple of alarm among the assembled beings. A crystalline form glided forward. Valora, her facets now permanently tinged with the blue resonance of Earth's justice frequency. "You bring the hegemony admiral to our sanctuary," she demanded, harmonic voice sharp with accusation. "A defector," Elena corrected, with critical intelligence. Dr. Osei approached from a makeshift laboratory where he'd been conferring with silicon-based lithoids, blocky crystalline beings who communicated through vibrational resonance. Nearby, gaseous ether drifters floated in containment fields, their translucent forms rippling as they perceived time in non-linear fashion. "The Eternal Radiance's attack accelerated our timetable," Osei reported. After the UN broadcast, resistance movements on 14 hegemony worlds have made contact using the frequencies we provided. 17 now, Zorax interjected, retrieving a data module from his tunic. The Archean Council has been monitoring unauthorized transmissions. They're concerned. The gathered representatives shifted uneasily. A nexus colony. A collective consciousness inhabiting multiple interconnected insectoid bodies, chittered excitedly. The human emotional projection damaged an archon, the collective voice translated through a device. In 8,000 years, this has never occurred. Zorax interfaced his data module with the chamber's central holographic projector. A massive structure appeared, a moon-sized geometric anomaly, pulsing with stolen life energy. The Eternity Engine, he explained. The source of Archean immortality and the core of their power. All 5 Archons have abandoned their separate territories to bring it to Earth. Why? Elena asked. Fear, Valora answered simply. For the first time in millennia, they face an actual threat. A small commotion at the chamber's entrance interrupted them. A human child, perhaps 7 years old, had slipped past security. The girl, daughter of a resistance fighter, wandered wide-eyed among the alien representatives. Guards moved to intercept her, but paused when she approached a particularly fearsome lithoid diplomat. The massive silicon being towered over her, its crystalline edges sharp and imposing. Without hesitation, she offered the alien a folded paper. The lithoid cautiously unfolded it to reveal a crayon drawing showing different colored beings holding hands around a blue-green sphere. The chamber fell silent as the lithoid's crystalline structure began resonating with a soft hum. Light rippled through its facets in patterns that, to those familiar with the species, indicated profound emotional response. What concept is this? It asked, voice grinding like stones. Friends, the girl answered simply. All different, but friends. Jiangwei, who had been coordinating Earth's tactical response, stepped forward from the shadows. This, he gestured to the child and the drawing, is what the Archons truly fear. Not our weapons or even our justice frequency. They fear connection across difference, the very foundation of genuine alliance. Valora's crystalline form brightened as understanding dawned. The Archons have ruled through isolation, keeping subjugated species separate, unable to share knowledge or build true cooperation. Zorax nodded solemnly. Control through division. It's embedded in every hegemony protocol. Dr. Ozai looked up from his instruments, excitement breaking through his exhaustion. Then perhaps our greatest weapon isn't just the justice frequency, but its transmission, breaking the isolation between worlds. Elena studied the galactic map displaying growing resistance points. We need to coordinate simultaneously across all contact points when the Eternity Engine arrives. Impossible, an aether drifter rippled. Communication lag between systems. Not impossible, Zorax interrupted. The Archons maintain a real-time psychic network connecting all hegemony worlds. I have access protocols. Valora's form pulsed with sudden intensity. And I have something more. She produced an ancient data crystal, the original galactic compact, with embedded fail-safes the Archons buried millennia ago. The assembled representatives gathered closer as she projected the document. Legal code from the hegemony's founding that explicitly protected sentient rights and provided mechanisms for removing leaders who violated them. A trial. Elena breathed, the concept crystallizing. Not just resistance, a formal trial under their own founding law. The child, still standing beside the lithoid diplomat, looked up at the projection of the approaching Eternity Engine. Are they the bad guys? She asked simply. Yes, the lithoid rumbled, its crystalline hand gently enveloping hers. But perhaps we are finally the good guys, together. The Eternity Engine entered Earth's orbit like a geometric nightmare, a moon-sized fractal structure that pulsed with stolen life energy. Its arrival darkened skies worldwide, as it partially eclipsed the sun. In its wake came the full Archean Council, 5 ancient energy beings who had not gathered in one location for 3 millennia. Beneath the Austrian Alps, the final preparations for humanity's most audacious gambit were underway. Transmitter network at 87%, Dr. Osai reported, his fingers flying across holographic interfaces. We've established connections with resistance cells on 2,439 worlds. Elena stood at the central command station, surrounded by the multi-species council. The Archons expect us to either surrender or attempt a desperate military strike. She reminded them. They don't expect a trial. Valora had transformed the central chamber into a courtroom configuration. Her crystalline form glowed with purpose as she reviewed ancient hegemony legal protocols. The original compact allows for emergency judicial review when evidence of sentient rights violations emerges, she explained. As former High Adjudicator, I can invoke the procedure and transmit it through the hegemony's own psychic network, Zorax added, adjusting the access codes he provided. Every being connected to the network will witness the proceedings simultaneously. Jiang Wei entered with the latest tactical assessment. The Archons have initiated their final approach. Their announcement is broadcasting across all frequencies. The command center screens display the Archons' message, golden energy beings speaking directly into the consciousness of every sentient on Earth. Inhabitants of Earth, your resistance ends today. The Eternity Engine has arrived to complete the harvest. All emotional energy will be extracted. Resistance is futile. It's time. Elena nodded to Valora. Throughout Earth, modified satellites and broadcasting stations activated simultaneously. In city squares and hidden bunkers, underground resistance cells connected specialized transmitters to the network. Valora stood before the central transmitter, her crystalline form shifting to the formal configuration of a hegemony high adjudicator. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of judicial authority. Attention all connected beings. By authority of Section 12, Paragraph 7 of the Galactic Compact, I, Valora, former High Adjudicator, hereby convene an emergency tribunal review. Across the hegemony's psychic network, her voice penetrated the consciousness of countless beings on thousands of worlds. The Archons' broadcast faltered momentarily as their control mechanisms encountered unexpected resistance. The Archon Council stands accused of violating the foundational principles of the Compact they swore to uphold, Valora continued. The evidence will now be presented. Dr. Osai activated the justice frequency transmitters. Human emotional projections, concentrated outrage, determination, and hope, amplified Valora's broadcast. The transmission penetrated the psychic network, carrying not just information but the emotional context behind it. From the Eternity Engine, the Archons' collective voice thundered with rage. This proceeding is unauthorized. All participating entities will be. Their transmission cut short as the evidence began streaming through their own network. 10,000 years of harvesting ceremonies, species reduced to hollow shells, civilizations destroyed to feed immortal parasites. In city squares across Earth, humans gathered despite the danger. As the psychic assault from the Archons intensified, they didn't flee but stood firm, focusing their collective emotional energy through the transmitters. Aboard the Eternity Engine, the Archon Council faced unprecedented resistance. Their energy forms, designed to absorb and process emotional energy, encountered something they couldn't control, the concentrated justice frequency of billions of minds united in purpose. Initiate emergency extraction. The lead Archon commanded. Drain this world now. The Eternity Engine's collection arrays activated, reaching toward Earth with tendrils of golden energy. But as they connected with the planet's collective consciousness, they encountered not fear but determination. The justice frequency, amplified by coordinated emotional projection, created a feedback loop through the engine's systems. Warning signals blared throughout the engine's control nexus. The golden energy began to pulse erratically as the Archons struggled to maintain control. In a desperate move, one of the Archons redirected the engine's power toward Earth's sun, attempting to trigger a solar flare that would devastate the planet. It never happened. A single hegemony vessel broke from the defensive fleet and accelerated toward the engine's main control node. The ship's communication system broadcast a final message on all frequencies. For my world. For all worlds. Admiral Zorax's vessel struck the control node at maximum velocity, creating a critical vulnerability in the engine's defenses. The Justice frequency, now streaming from thousands of worlds simultaneously, poured through the breach. The Eternity engine hung suspended in Earth's orbit, no longer a perfect geometric structure, but a fractured monument to tyranny. Golden light spilled from its ruptures as 10,000 years of stolen life energy sought release. The 5 Archons, their immortal forms destabilizing, struggled to maintain control as Justice frequencies from countless worlds poured through the breach created by Zorax's sacrifice. In the command center beneath the Alps, Elena watched the holographic display with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "It's working," she whispered. Dr. Osei monitored the transmission network, his exhausted face illuminated by cascading data. "The feedback loop is accelerating. Species across the galaxy are breaking free from psychic control, their suppressed emotions emerging after millennia. On thousands of worlds, beings of all forms experience true emotional freedom for the first time. Their collective consciousness, linked through the hegemony's own network, created a cascading wave of liberation that overwhelmed the Archon's control mechanisms. The final judgment," Valora announced, her crystalline form resonating with the combined frequencies of a galaxy awakening. Her voice carried across the universal broadcast. "By the authority of the original compact and the collective will of all sentient beings, the Archean Council is hereby removed from authority. The galactic hegemony is dissolved. The Eternity Engine's systems, designed to process and store emotional energy, could not contain the flood of liberated consciousness. Throughout its vast structure, critical systems began to fail. The lead Archon, its golden form flickering as it lost cohesion, made a final desperate broadcast. 'We are eternal. We cannot.' The transmission cut short as the engine's central core overloaded. In a spectacular display visible from Earth's surface, the massive structure imploded, collapsing inward before erupting in a blinding flash of golden light. The released energy, the combined life force of countless harvested beings, dispersed across the cosmos in luminous waves. The 5 Archons, their immortality mechanism destroyed, dissolved into the cosmic background radiation from which they had emerged eons ago. Silence fell across Earth's communication networks as humanity collectively held its breath. Then, from the darkness of space, transmissions began arriving. Thousands of ships from formerly subjugated species approaching Earth, not as conquerors but as pilgrims. 3 months later, the Galactic Reformation Congress convened in the newly rebuilt United Nations headquarters. Representatives from over 10,000 worlds gathered to forge a new interstellar compact based on self-determination and mutual protection. Valora, her crystalline form now permanently resonating with Earth's justice frequency, worked alongside Elena Rodriguez to draft the new charter. Where the hegemony had enforced uniformity, the new alliance celebrated diversity. Where the Archons had maintained control through isolation, the charter established open communication and cultural exchange. Dr. Osei led a multi-species research initiative studying the unique neural patterns that had proven so effective against the Archons. The project revealed something unexpected. Traces of similar resistance patterns existed in all sentient species, but had been systematically suppressed through generations of Archean control. The liberty frequency was always there, he explained during a presentation to the Congress. Humans simply rediscovered what all sentient beings possess, the capacity to resist tyranny through conviction. Memorial services for Admiral Zorax were held across 1,000 worlds, the once feared enforcer now honored as a symbol of redemption. Elena personally oversaw the establishment of a museum housing his collection of art from his homeworld, the first pieces in a galactic cultural preservation project. Earth became known as the Cradle of Liberty in galactic terminology. Human representatives served not as rulers, but as advisors, helping formerly subjugated species rediscover their cultural identities after millennia of oppression. 1 year after the fall of the hegemony, Elena visited a new school established in Vienna, where human children learned alongside alien younglings. In the playground, she paused to watch a lithoid child, a silicon being whose people had been enslaved for 12,000 years, struggling to understand a concept being explained by a human girl. But why fight when victory is not certain? The lithoid asked, its crystalline structure vibrating with confusion. The human child, daughter of a resistance fighter who had died during the occupation, took the lithoid's crystalline hand in hers. Because some things are worth fighting for, even when you might lose, she explained with the simple wisdom of youth. As the words left her lips, a subtle resonance passed between them, the liberty frequency spreading to a new generation that would never know the Archon's tyranny. The lithoid structure illuminated from within, understanding dawning in its crystalline consciousness. Elena smiled, reminded of what humanity had truly contributed to the galaxy, not superior technology or military might, but the unquenchable conviction that justice was worth fighting for, no matter the odds. In the vastness of space, the golden light released from the Eternity engine continued its journey outward, carrying with it the echoes of a singular truth that had toppled immortal tyrants. No power, however ancient, could withstand the strength of beings united in the cause of freedom.